So my name is Arturo Alonso. Right now I serve as a state representative for House District 89, located in South Oklahoma City. I attended undergrad at the University of Oklahoma, got my undergrad in mechanical engineering and focused a lot on collecting air particles. I did research within the realm of small particulates and how they impact human health, soil health, water health, and it's pretty much pollutants that came from combustion processes. So things like oil and gas sites, as well as just any type of internal combustion engine. Yeah, so as state representative, it is a position that really focuses a lot on leadership. Leadership wise, one of the big traits that I know I use every single day is empathy. So the ability to really try to understand someone else's perspective, someone else's views. Within the realm of politics, we deal with issues that impact almost every aspect of people's lives. The rights that people have or don't have, the laws and regulations that we have to follow in every aspect of life, what we fund, what we don't fund. And a lot of these conversations tend to be they can be controversial, they can be tough to have, because, depending on where you come from, your background, the people you've surrounded yourself with, just lived life experiences, we see the world in different ways, through different perspectives, through different filters. And building empathy has been something that I've leveraged a lot to try to really understand where people are coming from, why they vote a certain way, why they prioritize certain issues. And it's a big thing I focus on because I try to also create more empathy with others, when it comes to who I am and who I represent. So being young, I also have I'm someone that voices a lot of the issues impacting the young community. Being Latino, that's a community that also represents in different ways. And I really try to build that empathy with other legislators that maybe they don't surround themselves with a lot of people like myself, maybe they don't surround themselves with a lot of people that are young, that come from a Hispanic background. So helping them build that sense of empathy and understanding with communities that they might not be as in tune with. In addition to working with colleagues that are, other state representatives, senators, and I work for essentially my constituents. So I represent a district of around 40,000 people. I really focus a lot on trying to understand and really trying to better understand their life situations and how I can be of service. So really trying to set people up for success is a big focus for me. And I really focus a lot on listening and understanding. So really trying to analyze the system, analyze the situation, and apply a problem-solving mindset to it. These are the constraints. Now, what are our resources and how can we get to a position where, we're serving this person in a better way? On a day-to-day basis, constituents reach out to my office if they have issues with the state agency, if there's something that maybe there's a resource that they don't know about. So I try to connect them with those resources. So really trying to provide ways to be a problem solver too is a big focus for me. Another leadership quality that is important is the ability to tell stories, to tell compelling stories too, because whenever I try to convince someone of a piece of legislation, it's not just showing them this is the bill and this is what it's about. It's really trying to make things understandable to them because, people only really understand things in terms of their own life experiences. So trying to be in tune with people's perspectives, people's values and beliefs, and trying to align maybe something I want done with something they want done. To have a mutual relationship where we're both finding ways to benefit each other, but also just getting someone to start a conversation. I think within politics, it's really hard for people to meet in the middle and have conversations about issues that might be just controversial. So trying to find ways to leverage, storytelling and empathy in a way that just shows that we're a lot more similar than we are different. One thing I try to focus a lot of my own personal time on is reading books, reading articles, keeping in touch, in tune with the news, and really staying up to date with what's happening around the world. And I do that because, to build empathy and understanding with my colleagues, whether they be other legislators or whether they be community members or leaders within my area. It's just really being in tune and really trying to understand things from different perspectives. So I'm always actively, leveraging kind of that empathetic side of myself to challenge myself as well. So, I think I have tendencies to, be biased in certain issues. So recognizing, because I'm young, I'm Latino, I'm an engineer, I see the world a certain way. So trying to consider that and make sure that I'm challenging myself every day. So getting into things that maybe, someone's writing an article about an issue and they're writing it in a way that I probably don't agree with their stance, but I'm still going to read it because, maybe that's what my colleagues are reading. So I can better understand their perspective on an issue. Another big one, so I do a lot of mentorship within high schools. And one thing I try to focus on is empowering young people to know that they have a huge voice and play a huge role within state government. The messenger matters. So whenever a young person, brings up an issue that is close and important to them, so a lot of young people like myself might care about addressing, issues about environmental sustainability. It's coming from someone that's young. Young people tend to be symbols of the future. So whenever an older legislator is being reached out to, it just carries a different weight whenever it's someone that's young, like, hey, I got my whole future to look forward to, and this is why I'm concerned about these issues. Who we are does matter, and really wanting to make sure that we optimize who we are as people and the different identities we fall within to drive a compelling message. People give me credit because of who I am, so like if we're talking about an issue that affects young people, then people are more inclined to let's reach out to Arturo because, he's someone that's young, he might have a better perspective. All of us tend to lean towards issues or areas that we care about, that we find interesting. And it's important to really leverage those things that we focus on to be effective in the things we want to get done. So goals, I try to focus and think about goals almost every single day. And I do that because it's important to have direction. One goal I'm striving for is making Oklahoma a leader when it comes to deploying artificial intelligence responsibly and effectively. One area I'm focusing on that in is state government, making sure that state government works better for the people, and how can we use AI systems to make government more accessible, but also recognizing that there's certain guardrails we might need to consider to make sure we don't have negative effects as we deploy AI systems. So then I work back and be okay, to make sure we have responsible use of AI within state agencies. Now what do I do? Who do I reach out to? It helps me start generating questions and essentially creating a plan. In my personal life, right now I have a 5-year plan. And I don't have a 10-year, a longer plan, because in a few years, life happens, things change. And I know my plan is always kind of changing. 2 years ago, my plan was to move to Austin, Texas after graduating from OU, pursuing a job in mechanical engineering, and then eventually going to grad school. Running for office was never in the mix for me. I changed my, 5-year plan. And now, I'm planning on being in office for at least another 2 years. And then after that, maybe considering law school, and who knows what else, for when it comes to what I have in store for myself, goal-wise. Well, there's a lot of disagreements, at least within the work I do. Because, politics, like I said, it impacts every aspect of the way we live our lives. And a lot of these things tend to fall back on what values, what beliefs we have, lived experiences. Because I'll be having conversations with people where we disagree on nearly everything. But it's finding those areas where we agree and starting there. Where are those areas where we agree, even if we agree on everything else? And starting there, building the rapport, and really trying to empathize with the opposition, I guess. But I think it's important to just listen, setting the precedent that we might not, and we're probably not going to agree on everything. and that's okay. And making sure that the conversation always is productive. It's easy whenever there's disagreements for there to be more heated conversations because, maybe we're not listening to each other completely. I guess my goal isn't always to convince the other party that, my way is the best way and this is the way we should move forward. It's really trying to better help them understand where I'm coming from. And in the end, we might not come to an agreement, but at the very least, we're able to understand, our stances and where we fall in line with that. Two things come to mind. I know I'm definitely someone that's typically the youngest person in the room. With that, there does come, the idea of imposter syndrome. So the idea that, maybe like, man, like, do I belong in a space like this? And I'm like, man, like, I just graduated college and, I did not study political science. I studied mechanical engineering. So I know initially I kind of got in my head a lot about that. I was like, man, like, am I gonna say the right thing? Are people gonna just discredit me because I'm young? Over time, I've developed, the confidence to be like, you know what, I deserve to be in the spaces that I'm in. Being young, I think I provide a different perspective that a lot of people within, state government, because I've grown up in completely different times than most of my colleagues. And I lean on those experiences. And it took time. It took time to just be comfortable with that, be comfortable being the youngest person, and oftentimes, one of the few people of color within all these different rooms as well. And also leaning on, my area within engineering, and also being connected to the community I grew up in. That's helped me really, really contribute in different ways. Helping other people get used to, a young person that is in a position like the one I'm in. Because it's not common that you see a 25-year-old. I ran at 23, I'm 25 now, but, be in a position like this, because I know people like will be, if I'm not dressed up, they're like, oh, like, are you an intern? Are you a page? Like, who do you work for? So it's hard for them to understand that, someone as young as myself is an elected state representative. And it's just one of those things that people aren't used to, someone like myself being in a position like this. Me being someone that's been fairly sociable, it came a little easier. Getting up and talking in front of crowds, that was one of the challenges. They don't really train a lot of engineers within the realm of public speaking, but with practice and just kind of embracing fear, that's been one of the big things that helped me get out of the mindset of imposter syndrome and kind of getting at, because at the end of the day, I realized the biggest opposition I had was pretty much myself getting in my own way. But over time, by continuing to kind of, I guess, leverage exposure therapy. So, because I know I'm afraid of public speaking, I'm gonna sign up to a bunch of public speaking things. And I recognize, I might not be as effective as a seasoned public speaker, but every time I'm getting a little bit better. And that really does help. I'd say the biggest piece of advice is just, it starts by getting involved. And I think back to the it's a little cheesy of a quote, but the idea that, you got to be the change you want to see. If you want something to change within your community, you have to be willing to do something about it. And in high school, I did a lot of community service. I focused on volunteerism a lot. And it's because I grew up in a part of town that does lack in resources and has lacked in having good leadership. Growing up, seeing that, and coming from a family that is lower income, so whenever I saw leaders in my community doing work to address a lot of the issues that I saw growing up, I just did what I could to help them out. Oftentimes not really knowing how connected they were, how political they were, but that's what eventually got me to run for office, because there was a immigration lawyer, Senator Michael Brooks Jimenez, that was running for office whenever I was a senior in high school. He was someone that I was like, what, he's running for office. I know I'd seen him do different work within the community to make things just a bit better for families like mine. So knowing that he was someone that had a heart for his community, I was like, what, I'll see what I can do to help, And at the time, I didn't have a lot of money, so it's not like I could donate to his campaign. So I just dedicated a lot of time to knock doors, engage voters, mobilize some of my friends, and try to convince people like, hey, like, this is someone that we want to support and get elected. Eventually those same leaders that I did work with reached out to me because, they were like, Arturo, we've seen you're someone that has been involved and has been engaged and cares about the community. Would you consider running for office? That's what it takes. I mean, I feel like whenever people get involved, then you meet people that you never know who you're going to be meeting. And one thing I realized is that there's always someone watching, and especially if someone cares, is willing to do the work, is willing to learn. I'm always keeping an eye out to see who's out there active in the community doing work, just so I can kind of support them, give them the tools they need to be successful, and hopefully, eventually, maybe have them run for office. And that's kind of focused more within the work I do, but that can be said about so many different areas. I mean, within engineering, right? I know there's a lot of kids out there that are involved in their robotics clubs, and if they don't have a robotics club in their school, there's people out there that are willing to be those, founders, initiate that robotics club, for example. So it's those things that really push people forward, and really helps them be those community leaders that they can continue to become.